YouTube, Sam here. Well, here's another project, a little bit forcibly. I'm calling this Project GovBug because the government is bugging me about it. And I got a little bit more of a story that I've already kind of filmed, so I'll do that here. Quite honestly, this project is going to be more learning why you shouldn't let a car sit for a long period of time. The only thing wrong with this car, well, it needed work, it needs some body work, it needs cleaned up, but the only thing that was really wrong with this car is the last time we started it up, it started dumping gasoline out the back end, and a lot of people know that Volkswagens are notorious for that and ended up with fires. Now this is a 77, I believe. That's how long it's been since I messed with it. 77 Volkswagen, I believe. If it's not that, you'll read it down at the bottom what the year is. Anyhow, and when that happened, I set it to the side, and as most projects go, and I mean, this was actually my wife's daily driver. This is what she drove back and forth to work. And we had another car, like a Honda or something like that. She started driving that, and this thing sat. And unfortunately it sat long enough to where now there's a lot more wrong with it. So first lesson learned by this project is don't let your cars sit. Unfortunately I have a few projects like that out here. Next thing, when you let them sit too long now in the area I'm in, even though I used to be considered out of the city, unfortunately a bunch of idiots voted to make it a city, and now I can no longer have cars like this just sitting outside unless they are able to run. So now I brought it inside the garage here, and I've got to get it going. So there's the other lesson learned. Don't try, if you live outside the city, don't vote to make it a city. You'll get reamed upside one down and down the other. I'm not even going to go into all the things that are going on now in this city. So that's a whole nother issue, government aside. So we need to get this thing at least to the point where I can start it up, put it in gear, drive it around for them, so that I can, you know, at the very least it'll get me going on the project. Not that I don't have too many other projects. But at the same point, I just need to get it going enough to where it can be drivable, and I can show them it'll drive, and they can kiss my butt after that. But the first thing I'm working on here is this, and I can't get it open. And on the 77 Volkswagen, that's how long it's been since I've been in this thing. Actually, in the jock box there is a lever. I sat here with screwdrivers and pry bars trying to mess with it. Luckily I didn't really do any damage that I can see anyway. There's a lever to hit, so hit that lever, don't sit here trying to get it open. It's like I said, it's been a long time since I worked on it. I need to clean this up a little better, and then right here I'm going to go ahead and pull that out, and this is just like the sending unit basically to for the gas gauge, I believe. But that'll give me a good idea of what's in there, and also probably be able to get the gas out of there a little bit easier maybe. I will go down below where the fuel pump is and probably disconnect all that, make sure all that stuff's kind of ran through, so I'm not running a bunch of good gas or bad gas through as much as I possibly can. One of those I am not responsible if you do something I do situation. We're dealing with the gas tank, and although most people will probably don't know this, but gas, although flammable, is not what normally catches on fire and explodes. What actually catches on fire and explodes is the fumes coming off the gas. So this is actually probably more of a dangerous situation than having an entirely full tank of gas when it comes down to things, because it's a very empty tank. It's got old, nasty gas, what's left in there. So therefore it's got a lot of nasty old fumes, and those are the problem you will have when it comes to explosions and fires. So be careful with what you're doing. Don't be smoking cigarettes or anything else, in my state especially. And be careful with your tools. The reason I'm saying this is I noticed when I was messing around with things, I, you know, smacked a tool on a couple things, just not even thinking about it really. And those are things you got to think about. So once again, I'm not responsible if you try something I do and blow yourself up. Alright. As I expected, this video is going to kind of turn into a video of what not to do when you put away your cars. One big thing is don't leave gas in it if you plan on leaving it for a long period of time. Because this gas has definitely kind of gone rancid. It stinks. I've smelt worse, but I still don't want to let this just go through the tank. I'm going to get as much of that out of there as I can. It doesn't look to be too awful rusty down in the tank, and quite honestly, there's probably less than half a tank. I can actually see the bottom of the tank in places, so there's not a ton in there. And like I said, it actually doesn't look too bad in there. To be honest, when I bought this car, according to the lady I bought it from, which you can never tell, they replaced a bunch of the fuel stuff and had the tank gone through and cleaned, and it actually does look actually pretty clean for how long I've let it sit. So it wouldn't surprise me if they had done that. Hopefully I didn't ruin anything. Plus the sending unit here looks like it's fairly new. And we drove this car for 2 or 3 years maybe before I shut it down. So hopefully nothing will be too bad. Unhook the filler neck here. A couple of hose clamps. I'll probably get a new piece of hose. This looks like it's original to the car. It's actually a fairly rare fuel injected 77 with a sunroof, so it's worth putting a little bit of time and money into. I guess I should take that off. It just kind of sits in there. I could pull this whole thing out if I took all this off, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. Right now my goal is just to kind of get this tank out and hopefully be able to pull it out and empty it. There's also this breather here, which feels pretty seized on there. But, there we go. This doesn't even open up hardly. Pretty much broke that off. Nothing came out here, so somebody tightened that too much. There we go. And that'll get tossed into the bin. Now, one thing, I'll toss things like this in the trash or in the scrap is where this will end up. But I don't care how broke a piece is on a car, or how wore out a piece is on a car, or doesn't matter, especially with cars. Now Volkswagens, you can probably find every part and piece in this thing somewhere. They're decently easy anymore to get parts for, but I still don't throw anything away. That, like, I won't throw this away until, you know, that way I know this needs to be here to put on here. Not only in case you can't find a part for some reason, but also to remind yourself, okay, I need to either replace that or it needs to go back where it was. If I go and throw that away, you know, I probably would remember to get a piece of hose here, but I'd have to figure out how long it was and what clamps it used if I was really restoring it, which I'm not completely restoring this car, and all those kind of things. So even like clamps, this is not an original clamp here. So if this was an original clamp, I would have done everything I could to try and save it. If for nothing else, then trying to find original clamps again to put on it. But a little tip and trick there, just don't throw anything away until the project is absolutely completely finished. And even then, if it's a fairly rare part and somebody else might be able to use it, or you might need it down the road, you know, I keep a lot of parts even from cars I don't even have anymore because I may one day own them again. Another thing, and I'm sure if you're into cars at all, you probably know this, but bag and tag everything. Obviously, I know where that goes. I've been doing this a while, so I'm not going to tag what that is. But something I did do is I threw the screws in here with it. And there can be a problem with throwing screws into bags with parts without tagging them or marking them. If this got a hole in it, those could easily fall out and you'd lose them. I tend to, instead of putting the screws in bags or anywhere else, I will actually take and put the screws back in. Now here you got to be real careful, you end up with them down in there. And don't just throw them in like that. I put them all the way back in for the most part. I won't tighten it down, but that way I know that that's where that screw goes. There's no doubt in it, and I don't find it on the floor going, boy, where did that go? So when I pull bolts and nuts out or off of things, if I can, I put them back in the holes. It's been a little while, and we're back on the Volkswagen here, and right behind the passenger side tire. Yes, I know that is very rusted. Is underneath here. Right there is the fuel pump, and on mine I got a couple zip ties and some metal things holding it together, some screws and stuff, and it's not exactly perfect, but I'm gonna go ahead and replace that now that I'm messing with this stuff now. Anyway, you just undo, at least on mine, there's a bolt there and there's a screw there. I'm assuming there's probably 2 bolts, and then in between in here is kind of like, should be a rubber thing. Mine is there, but not very well on this side. But anyway, so you undo that, and that should pull off whatever you have holding your fuel injection. This is only for a fuel injected one. It goes up and around in that square box there. I'm assuming is a fuel filter, which I also will be replacing, and it goes up in there to the bottom of the tank. Alright, well, I unhooked it from the back of the fuel pump right there and brought that hose out and around, and now it's draining. Well, for some reason I need to go to the bathroom, so I'll get back at you when I'm done with that. Alright, I think I got a better view now of the 2 things going in the bottom of the tank. One of them looks like kind of like a brass fitting. I'm going to try to unhook that. It looks like you could use just a wrench and undo that from the bottom. The other one over here is just a regular hose clamp, hooking that one in. It doesn't look to me like this is actually the bottom of the tank. It looks like the tank just pokes through probably those couple holes. So I'm not even actually sure if that one hooks to the tank at all. I just can't tell. Yeah, I think it does. So I'm thinking that the 2 nipples actually poke through the bottom of the floor here, because this is not the bottom of the tank here. So we'll have to undo those before that tank will be able to be lifted up. Hopefully you can see this right here, that nipple, it's sticking down right there. That had the hose that was going from the fuel filter down to the fuel pump. And the bigger one right there had this one here, which must be a return line, is the only thing I can think of it. So they must have a return line on this because it is a fuel pump. And it comes out of the chassis or the bottom of the rig here and goes up and over and up into that. And that stuffs up inside that big pipe. And right there at the end of my finger, I don't know if you can see it, there's a brass fitting right there. That brass fitting is what was up on there. I used a 22 millimeter is what I used. I'm not sure what that relates to. I think that might be, it'd be bigger than 3/4, I would think, but I know that there is an equivalent in non-metric, but 22 millimeter is what I used because that seems to work really well for a lot of this stuff. Anyhow, so that pulled actually out of the bottom of the tank. So the 2 nipples there are what we were trying to get at. Now I should be able to go up above here and actually pull the tank. So that's probably... Now we got everything from the bottom of this all figured out. I believe we're at the top where we can unbolt it and start pulling it out. First thing, it looks like going up here, there's some sort of a, I don't know, vacuum type air line of some sort, I'm assuming. And it is really, really on there and crusty. So I'm gonna, there's plenty of length here, I'm gonna go ahead and just cut that off, and if I have to replace it, I have to replace it. That hose off, I don't see anything else. We already took those off earlier. The only wire I see going to it was the one here that went to the sending unit area there. So to me it looks like there's, what, 4? I think 4 bolts that are 13 millimeter right here, right here, back over by the filler neck area, and on the opposite corner. Just those 4 is all I see. So, wow. And this one's barely in here, which yet again makes me think that this tank has been actually taken out before we bought it. And they have. So it sits like that on the top of the tank and just kind of clips between the body and the tank right here. So hopefully you can see that. Sits just like that. When I'm all done taking this tank out, I'm just going to put those right back in where they go. Probably technically wouldn't even need to take them all the way out, but I'm a firm believer, if it's in your way, get it out. Oh, there goes my gas cap right into the bucket of gas I just drained out of here. Yeah, these back ones, somebody tightened them down by hand and didn't finish them off with a wrench the last time this was done. And I apologize if I'm mumbling or you can't hear me. It is very cold in here, and as you all know, I get several comments telling me how much I mumble. And being cold is not helping, because I'm a bit bundled up. That should allow the tank to raise up. There are a few wires and things you got to kind of work around. There we go. Tank is out. And I'll have to remember this. There is a lot of room to get like to the brake booster and all the steering components and all that in the fuel pump down underneath here. Although if you were doing fuel pump, you'd have to unhook these lines before you took the tank out anyway. But still, lots of room to work on all the steering stuff here. This is the first Volkswagen Beetle I've ever owned. I've owned a couple buses, and I don't know a whole lot about them either. Haven't done a whole lot of work on them. But this is a good thing to know. The body mounts are up here. Going across the front end here, all the steering components, all the brake components. So that'll be nice to know later on when I'm working on that stuff. Would have been nice to know earlier, because I actually replaced some of this already. First project done on the GovBug here. Well, not totally done, obviously. I'm going to have to go through and finish up the fuel system, but this one was just basically on getting this fuel tank out of here, and quite honestly there was hardly any fuel in it. So because I started it, I'm gonna go ahead, I've decided to go ahead and finish this video, but I'll probably take a look at it, maybe do a little clean out on it, maybe even hose it out and dry it out real good, something like that. But it's really not that dirty in there, so I definitely don't think I need to replace it. And there's not a lot of rust or anything in there. The gas kind of was stinky, but not that bad. I put quite a bit of fuel stabilizer stuff in it, so I think I'm okay as far as that. So there's how you take a fuel tank out of a 77 Volkswagen Beetle. Alright, this is Sam, Jack of all, master of none. You all have a good one.